Hello, everyone. Welcome to Colorado Collegiate Focus. My name is Jonathan Cronenberg. Joining me, I handle the CSU things for this Colorado trio. To the left of me, right? Yeah, is Tony Casolo. He does Buffs Wire. And
Whoa!
yes, he's the big dude, and he is and he covers obviously CU Buffs, which is a big thing coming up. And down below we have Rick Baum, the super fan, the everything for Air Force, the guy who knows it all. How are you doing today, Rick?
Hey, you know what? I'm doing good, guys. It's good to get back together. What a great kickoff we had with all those amazing previews in week 0. We were all 100% on our games for week 0, so we are undefeated. Tony, awesome beginning to week 0.
Yeah. This is going to be a really fun season, and I can't wait to get into it. We're actually ready to kick off Colorado football. Let's go, boys.
Exactly. No more going to Dublin, for the beginning of every year where Notre Dame won 42-3 against Navy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did that make you happy, Rick? Does when Navy loses versus non-academy teams, how does that make you feel?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm an academy guy, so like we talked about last week with our interstate rivalries.
Yeah.
Really, the games that we play each other, of course, I'd like my team to win. But every other game, I want success. I want no injuries, and that's the way I felt about this one. Though it was good experience for the new coaching staff.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's one of those things where I think, again, traveling to Dublin, it's a great experience for everyone as well. And even though they didn't come out with the win, I think it provides good financial support for these teams, obviously, later when it comes down to that. So, but yeah, week 0, it's gone. It's out the window. We are ready for some real college football to get going, and I'm very excited. Rick, why don't you tell us a little bit about some things going on, though, with this Air Force shop?
Okay, so today we're gonna have a handful of sponsors throughout these casts over the weeks, but today we're gonna go ahead and go with the Air Force Team Store. I don't know if anybody's been paying attention like I have, but they did launch their Air Power Legacy uniforms that they do every year, and this year's theme is the Doolittle Raiders, which, like I said last week, is perfect. Because if you're a Denver fan, you're familiar with the Raiders, and they do little, kind of like Denver lately. So, awesome opportunity if you need new merch. If you like the old merch, see that's and the thing I like about this one is clean, right? We're white on chrome. You can't get any more clean. These units, they debut on the 21st of October in Annapolis. I will be there with some live coverage. We'll be able to kind of see what that looks like from there. And Stephanie is the manager down there. We're specifically wanting to mention anybody that is going to the game this Saturday morning and visit her over there in Team Store South End Zone.
Yeah, I mean, that's some great things going on and a lot of opportunities. So get down there, get some good gear. And like you said, these items are so clean and crisp. And those uniforms, when they premiere, they look so good just from the images we've seen. I can't wait to see them kind of more, in person, in action. So that's where I get excited about some of these uniform changes personally, especially when it comes to the academies.
Well, I tell you, you guys both have so many different variations and some really amazing, beautiful uniforms with CU and CSU. And we've always kind of been the white and the blue. And it's really special when we get a chance to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, I love those cool the special uniforms that the academies bust out. They're so steeped in tradition, like you were mentioning, harkening back to the Doolittle Raiders like that. They look so cool. I love them.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, it's one of those things where what was your favorite helmet? You told me before, but tell me your favorite helmet on this pod that you've seen for Air Force.
2016, we did the basically the shark tooth helmet, right? It's solid silver with the shark's mouth and the teeth, and beautiful uniforms. We actually wore them in our bowl game that I was at against South Alabama.
Yeah.
Are those the A10 Warthog uniforms?
Yes.
Those are awesome. I love those. Yes, those look great.
And I was fortunate enough to get an autographed helmet from that game. And
Really, from who?
Well, I got it from the team, and then of course I took it around to the guys, and
you got it signed. That's so awesome. That is something special. That
it is on lockdown.
It is. That's something you put in the safety deposit box, and you just look out every once in a while, almost kind of thing. It's just, I understand those. You're so close with the team, with the players. I understand what that means to you. So, very excited to work with the Air Force Falcons on more of this, and go to the shop and take a look at what they have to offer.
Definitely.
All right, so. Why don't we get into, start talking a little bit about, what we're paying attention for each team for week one, kind of the key indicators. If you don't mind, I'll start first with CSU. And for me, it comes down to this offensive line. They had, one player essentially from last year is returning onto that offensive line. Everyone else is a transfer player who has significant playing time, but they're at lower levels. So it is really up to this line and Bill Best to get them going in that rhythm. Again, they have the experience, they have the size for the first time compared to previous years. The question is, again, are they going to be able to meld together with a team like Washington State that was able to, honestly, I think they got 6 sacks or around there last year against the Rams, and that just is unacceptable. You can't win a game with that many sacks. You're going to have 3 and outs. You're going to have, your quarterback's going to get hit. He's going to become shy in the pocket. So for me, if this offensive line can really come together as a unit, I think that CSU has a much better shot than others predict. Personally, that is the biggest thing for me. Some things that I'm paying attention for otherwise really is Clay Millen going to be able to complete that high percentage rate where he was before. He was at that 72% in the 70s. That is very high percentage passes. It's just also a matter of, can he reach different receivers besides Horton? Honestly, he has Ross Simmons. He had 3 touchdowns last year. It's time to get him involved and get him going. That's how I feel with CSU right now. They honestly have to take advantage of that line and then continue to have those high percentage completion plays that they've been able to do to have sufficiently long drives and wearing out the defense of Wazoo.
Definitely. Tony and me mentioned this last week, to have a guy with such a high completion percentage and yet be sacked more than anybody else. I'll tell you what, if they can do something, even if it's minimal with that O-line, I really think there's a lot of upside. Maybe not in this game, but I do think it's an intriguing matchup.
Yes,
yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and everything starts up front when it comes to football teams, especially with a team like Air Force, but even with a team like CSU, they're going to have that wide open attack. Those linemen are going to be matched up one-on-one more often. If you're sending more guys out in the route tree, you're going to have to step up and start to eliminate some of those costly sacks.
Tony, what are you paying attention to in reference to Texas Christian University?
Well, I think all eyes are going to be on Coach Prime. It's hard not to just gravitate towards that man. But after all the hype, after all the videos, we finally get to see what the football looks like. Now, his introduction, that spring game, there was a lot of things you could hang your hat on. Shedeur Sanders looked great. Yeah. The starting defense was able to hold down the second team offense. But now we get live fire. We actually get to see this new staff, this new roster, all the changes that have been made to the university. Is it going to come to fruition? Are we actually going to get things turned around? CU's offense, and like I wrote about even today, CU's offense has been horrible for a long time. I think I went back, looked in the last 5 years, they've only scored over 30 points 16 times in the last 54 games. You got to start scoring. You got to turn around that offense. And again, it all starts up front. If you keep Shedeur upright, you're going to be able to make some plays downfield.
Man, what a talent. As somebody that covers them, are you starting to pay attention to some of the back and forth with Coach Prime and some of the media? It almost seems like every time you ask a question, you really have to kind of predict his possible reaction, because there's been some stuff that seems so straightforward, and man, he's questioning everything. I would have a hard time. I've got a coach that kind of goes in a different direction, but you got somebody that might be a little difficult.
Yeah, I think that's, we kind of talked about it last week, that he kind of has that crusty old coach to him that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
You got to be on point when you're asking. He's got that old soul. He's a little more old school when it comes to coaching than you'd normally expect from a guy that has the pomp, that has the hype around him that Dion does. But yeah, he's interesting. I have not gotten the backlash yet. But
some guys have been beat.
I assume it's going to be coming.
But when it happens, it's one of those things where you still have people that will, defend you, because you're probably going to be very realistic with your questions, and it's one of those things where I think it's just part of his kind of his attitude and how he goes about things. I think the players like that he does that, and he kind of supports them through the way he talks in his conferences. So I understand why that would be something that he does for a reason. Honestly, for me, I think it's something that backs up his players.
Yeah, I think that's something that CU and especially the city of Boulder has needed for a long time. They need a no-nonsense coach. He's going to tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. When he came around and said, there's going to be massive changes to this roster. You saw the uproar. You saw it. And then he went and did it. That's just what's going to happen. He is a man that is going to tell you the truth, and you're going to hear it, whether you want to or not.
To me, he kind of takes kind of that hybrid combination between a Bill Belichick as far as knowledge and experience, and then throw a little bit of Dennis Green in there.
Yes, that's a good call. That's a good one.
I like that. Yeah, that is. That's a great comparison. I like that a lot.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where the entire across the board, I'm very interested to see how this coaching staff does for for CU. I just see they have so many different guys. Tim Brewster being a head coach of Minnesota in the past. All these guys have so much background and knowledge that they can really elevate these student athletes to that next level. Even though they were in the past, on a lower tier kind of team, that kind of thing. I think he's going to get those guys right.
Yep,
definitely.
So, Rick, you mentioned the contrasts in coaching styles. What are we going to see out of Troy Calhoun and our Falcons here? What are you looking at?
It's funny. One of the things I'm paying attention to, and John witnessed it firsthand yesterday, is just that, that calming effect. We've got a lot of guys that have not started. All right, but on the flip side, we got a lot of guys who have, and there's specific, and I'll get into it here in a second. There's some specific positions that are seeing some new players, and that's exactly what I'm paying attention to. And coach downplays everything. His post-practice speech yesterday had a lot to do about conduct, very little to do about football. He talked about protecting your eligibility. He talked about how you act outside of the football field, what you need to do as a cadet and as a student. So very little football in that, but a lot of life lessons, and that's basically what you got. Me and John were fortunate yesterday. We got to really get in the mix and kind of felt a little bit cloaked as far as so many things were going on. They didn't really notice that we were that close, but it was pretty special. So I'm just paying attention to our normal beginning of the year stuff and really taking it in.
Yeah, and when it comes to, again, hearing Coach Calhoun speak, that calming effect, like you said, it felt like something where, hey, guys, we have this plan. This is what we're going to do to get ready. Just do these steps, and I'll get you there to where you need to be. And that's what I like to hear most out of him. Honestly, the whole staff has that kind of ability to do that. So Calhoun has done a fantastic job, and I'm very excited to see what they're able to do.
Yeah, and I saw a direct reflection of that demeanor. So he addresses the team. Everybody's calm. They get in. They break down. They do their stretches, and then the players got together, and man, they got on it. They said, "Listen, we haven't won a game this year. We don't get anything. All you guys that have these preseason accolades, they mean nothing. We fight for Saturday at 11 o'clock." And I'll tell you what a great 1-2 punch that is.
Yes, and also one other thing, being Parents Week, that was really special as well. Seeing that with Air Force, just because all the different parents that came, that they had they were alumni, they did Air Force football. It was just such a different kind of atmosphere where everyone was talking to each other, coming up and saying hello. It was just very special. I can see that there's going to be those kind of family lineage going to Air Force.
You know what I was surprised at is so many people in just this brief time period came up to us and said, "Hey, watch the podcast."
Yes.
I was like, wow, that's
awesome.
Yeah, typically, this builds over a period of time. But yeah, just to have people come out of the blue and say, "Hey, we recognize you guys. We listened to the podcast. It was extremely long, but we did fast forward to Air Force." So
there you go. There you go. They were smart.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's get into our week 1 matchups, huh? Let's go for it.
All right.
Let's do it. Who wants to go first?
You know what? It worked good last week. I'll go ahead and take the lead if that's okay.
Go for it.
All right. So first and foremost, apologies to my brothers up there. We are playing the Sisters of the Poor in comparison to your Power 5 matchups. To be honest with you, I'm a little bit embarrassed, but it has been the Air Force creed over the years to have that. Last year it was UNI, which some people thought could have even been an upset.
Yeah.
But we do have Bobby Moe this weekend. If you're not familiar with Robert Morris, they are a great, amazing basketball school. So, in reference to them, they have actually been on a little bit of a losing streak. Specifically, they've won 2 games going all the way back to COVID. No wins last year, and but they got some great stories. In researching this team, I saw some stuff that really, really got me looking about college football, right? And specifically, they've got a kid at quarterback. His name is Anthony Chickett, and he is a kid, and I'm sure if you watch the broadcast, they'll probably give you some background. But he's a kid who was not expected to live a couple years ago. He had stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. They basically were planning on what happens next as far as his health goes, and made a miraculous recovery. He will be one of 2 quarterbacks that Air Force will face for RMU, and you gotta root for a guy like that, right? I know both of us over the years have had players that have been ill. I remember Salinesi's one that, from back in my day.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm just a little bit curious. I mean, if they kind of were getting him prepared for those next stages, obviously his body just had to fight back it kind of on its own. That is incredible. And I mean, that's where you root for players like that to do well. And even if it's against your own team, you don't want him to win, but again, you still are able to have respect for what he's been able to do. And that's huge. That I'm so glad he was able to overcome that.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of emotion, like I mentioned about Salinesi, that kind of stuff, when you've got a player, Sal, unfortunately, never was able to overcome that. This young man, the PR department over there, they're using words like miracle, 1 in a million, all that stuff, and
It sounds like that.
This guy,
Mhm.
I hope he does well in his career. I hope he even does well on Saturday. For that fact, I think that's just a cool story.
Yeah, I think that really is a cool story. And I think all of us have been touched by cancer in some way, where at the end of the day, we can always root for someone who overcame those obstacles, and we felt it. And so much of us feel like we want that success too, because we've lost someone and it's been hard, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
man. I'll tell you, that's one of those things where you just it does not. Nobody you talk to will say, "Man, cancer's never affected me or anybody that I've cared about." That's something you will just not hear, unfortunately.
Yeah, it really is sad, but again, it sounds like for Robert Morris, what are their goals going to be in terms of trying to get, are they going to try to aim for, hey, let's get a couple field goals? What do you expect them to aim for in terms of this is what we want out of this game? Because I can't see them being able to push the ball down the field too much.
So one of the things that jumped out to me is they had 5 players that received offers from the Air Force Academy. And through whatever channels they decided to go to Robert Morris. And these guys are probably going to have a little bit extra, as far as wanting to do something. I think that this defense is going to surprise Air Force probably for about a quarter, maybe even a half, on because we've got some things going on the other side of the ball that we're going to have a little bit of growing pains, like I talked about next week. So I think really if they can get a field goal or two, they'd be happy. If they can get a touchdown or two,
that's a successful game for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you said last year they didn't win a single game, right?
That's correct.
That would be huge, especially against Air Force's defense and what they've been able to do. Again, I know you said there's some pieces missing. You lost a corner, but at the same time, to be able to do that is a statement for them to be able to say, hey, look, we're going in the right direction. But at the same time, Air Force, are they looking to this to be a statement game where they're going to win by 30, 40 points? They want that kind of victory.
Yeah, you almost need it when you're playing an opponent like this. Back to the initial apologies, it's just, it's one of those things where I think it's good for this program, however, because we really, stuff, on a sad note, like we talked about with Anthony and his cancer diagnosis, which he obviously beat. We've got something going on. This is, like you mentioned, John, Parents Weekend. And all of the players will be wearing a HB 79 decal on the back of their helmets. One of our centers, who would have been a starter most likely next year, by the name Hunter Brown from Louisiana. Hunter was an amazing kid. I was very fortunate to get to know him a little bit. Spoke with him on several occasions, and he passed away unexpectedly. His death at age 21 was due to a previous injury he had suffered as a football player, some issues with blood clots, etc. I won't get into it, but it was one of those things that really will make or break a program.
Yes.
In this case, there isn't a practice. John, as you witnessed and actually documented yesterday, huge team prayer, probably 25, 30 guys that I was a part of. And Hunter is on the minds of these young men on a daily basis. And really, these growing pains or whatever we got coming, I'm hoping that their drive to win for their brother will surmount any of those initial growing pains.
Yeah, and I agree. I saw everyone wearing, shirts for him and so many different things. Obviously, it's going to be something difficult, but I think if any team can come over it, it would be Air Force. And I mean come over it in a sense that they're going to, like you said, they're going to do this for their brother. And that's how I feel that they're going to handle this and take care of business for him. I mean, it's going to be the whole season essentially for him.
Definitely, and I have not felt this feeling in regards to an Air Force player that we've lost. You got to go back to Carson Bird, died of bone cancer. D. Dowis died in a traffic accident. I mean, when those things happen to certain people, it can galvanize a team. Hunter's smile, and I'm going to post some pictures on our site. This kid would light up a room. Just gone way too soon. I've been corresponding with his dad, and they really just appreciate the love that they've gotten. And you know what? At some point, I'll probably end up saying it. It won't be against RMU, but it'll probably maybe be last game of the year, Boise State. Win one for Hunter.
Oh, wow.
Gotta save
yes.
the Gipper speech till we get towards the biggest games. But yeah, this kid was and is special. I say is because he's alive on campus.
Yes, his spirit, everything. I felt it. Like I said, I was at practice yesterday. I could feel the people caring about him, and again, that was just them, in practice when they're very hyper focused. So I can't imagine when they're kind of feeling a little bit hurt from the loss, where they're at. So it is one of those things where, gosh, you feel for the entire team.
Yeah, those shirts were pretty cool, weren't they?
They actually were very, very cool. They were very nice, classy, and I could see honestly the team store honestly having a few of those. That would be very nice, honestly, to be able to get.
Those will be more insider shirts, but
okay.
I'll get the three of us one.
That's something special. Again, when I saw everybody in that, it was an immediate notice, and again, I'm glad that they're wearing the decals on the helmet as well for him, and it's just that's how it should be.
Yeah, definitely. So here's what I got as far as the preview goes.
Go for it.
It's not going to be as in
depth as usual.
Well, it's just one of those things. I don't think there's a need. So here's what you're going to see tomorrow. You're going to see some injury fill in for starters. You're going to see some things at quarterback on Saturday. So specifically at quarterback, and we saw it yesterday, John. They're right now going with two guys, Jensen Jones, who we talked about his physical attributes last week. Zach Larrier, we talked about his blazing speed last week. So we're going to see how that works out for him. And this is the perfect situation for those two to see who your guy is, right?
Yeah, you could kind of ease into the season and kind of get that momentum rolling against a team that you should probably handle. Rick, you kind of mentioned, and this is a question I wanted to get out to you. So you had said that, kind of Air Force and Robert Morris were recruiting those same guys. Do they run a similar offensive attack? Does Robert Morris rely on the triple option, or was it just that type of athlete that Air Force wanted to add?
So they basically have this hybrid where they'll throw a little bit of RPO at you, which of course is a distant cousin of the triple option. They've got a lot of wide stuff like we run, a lot of fullback leads up the middle and stuff. So I could see why certain athletes. I think of the five I looked at, three were on the defensive side of the ball, and you'll see actually at each level you'll see a guy on the line, a guy on the linebacker crew, and then another guy that was a strong safety. So, yeah, we'll have to see. I know most times when they choose not to come to Air Force, it just has to do with the total package, right? The intensive, 14-hour days, etc.
Yes. I mean, it's crazy. I know you do crazy hours as well, though. But they wake up, they immediately get to going. Then they got to go to classes. I mean, when do they even have time to eat? It's that kind of question. Sometimes they really have to take a lot of time and do their due diligence in making this decision, because the other programs have time off with that and are able to escape from school if need be for a day or so. That's not really available for the Air Force.
No, not at all. And you saw yesterday, John, that we stopped practice and we salute just before 5 p.m. And it doesn't matter what play you're running, where you are on the field, you face to the south and you listen, you listen and you give respect and then it's back to work. So back to some of these matchups besides the quarterback, you're going to see probably a new fullback, at least initially. Either an Owen Burke or a Jed Harris. Emmanuel Michel will end up in that spot. He was approved by the NCAA 2 days ago to return, which he's a super duper senior, which is great. We don't ever, I don't say ever, but 6-year seniors in the Air Force system, I can count them on 2 hands. We have a 67-year history.
Yes.
So the other positions I'm looking at right tackle. We've got a sophomore, Mason Carlin. He will be filling in for Caleb Holcomb, who is working on some back issues. Caleb Rios, our starting tight end, he will be healing, and he will be somebody that will be back. James Bryant will fill in nicely. On the defensive line, we got Capono Blake that will be filling in at one of the guards. You're going to see probably a rotation of guys at nose guard. I know we found out exclusively yesterday that we're probably going to be without our first team preseason Mountain West nose guard, Peyton Zadroik, who's wisely going to wait until game 2 probably to take the field. A couple new cornerbacks on one side. We got Jerome Galliard on one side and Corey Collins and or Jamari Bellamy. Other than that, everybody else has started at least one game. So I'm just looking forward to consistent effort. We've got an amazing field goal kicker in Matthew DePore. Matt has been clutch from 60-plus in practice. It's been really nice to watch. I hope they give him an opportunity on Saturday, and the rest will be about enjoying Parents' Weekend.
Awesome. Exactly. That sounds great. So I know, Rick, you got to get running here soon.
Yes.
Why don't you give us your score prediction for Air Force Robert Morris?
Okay, my prediction is as follows. I would say 49-3.
There we go.
Love that.
Love it.
Love to hear it.
Yes, awesome. That's going to be great. I appreciate you coming on, Rick. We'll have you again next week and when you're back. But thank you so much. It was great talking to you. I loved going to practice, by the way. And again, have a great time at Robert Morris's game, or whatever you want to call him today.
It's funny to end with this, guys. I got asked to be on a call-in show from one of the Robert Morris alums, and I told him, I said, you know what, I really believe that there is a scenario where you guys could blow us out. However, that would be in college basketball, and it won't be on Saturday. So,
exactly.
You guys have a good rest of the show.
Thank you so much.
I'll be watching both of those games, and I'll actually probably be doing a little film study, especially on CSU. You guys have a great one.
Be well, Rick. Go Falcons.
All right.
Go Falcons. Thank you so much. And as we get Rick out of here, just have to thank him for so much. He's been able to go to a few camps. It has been special being able to go to a few practices. The players there at Air Force, again, I have never witnessed this kind of players be able to come up to you and just say, hey, my name is, they introduce themselves. They want to know who you are. It is very special. So,
I would love to make it up there. I promise I'm not being mean, guys.
Yes.
I have 2 very young kids and I got to make time for it. So I promise I will make it to Colorado Springs at some point.
Yes, there's a lot going on there, and I think we'll have a good time if all 3 of us can go and get some seats and just be able to hang out, because so many podcasts, these people are spread out, and that's one thing I like about us is that we're all here in Colorado. We can meet up when we want to. That's one thing that is very special. So
it's awesome.
It is. So, do you want to move on to CSU, CU? What are you feeling? What are you?
Let's head up north. Let's head up north. Let's go up to Fort Collins, baby.
Let's do it. So, obviously, we spoke about kind of what things that we're kind of looking, things that we like about our week 1 matchup, things that we may not be thrilled with. Again, for me, a lot of this comes down to just not knowing how this offensive line is going to gel. On top of that, I'm not sure how that the running back room is going to be divvied up. It felt like Kobe Johnson was going to be the guy. I believe he came from North Dakota State, and it really felt like it was going to go to him at the last second. Just a week ago, Avery Amaro came in. He was their leading rusher. He didn't have a high average yards per carry or some of those kind of statistics, but he was their leading rusher. And then again. Go ahead.
So is that a situation where you could see where maybe you go with like a running back by committee there for CSU?
I think this is a running back by committee kind of thing, very much like CU is going to do. CU has much more of a sense of, hey, we're going to do a rotation to keep everyone fresh and have that kind of thing. I think it's going to be more of a, this is the only 2 guys we have. We have to give them kind of equal share of carries and make sure they all feel kind of balanced, because that was kind of promised to each of them versus CU, where it's just like, hey, we're all going to be fresh and running for 60 yards and going for that. But I really do feel like CSU is going to start opening up some holes, especially with their line kind of starting to have that set kind of guys. It's 5 guys that have worked together through camp together. There's no changes at the end into the season right now, at least no injuries. And again, those guys have played 30 games. A lot of them are graduate, players. So that experience is going to make a difference for this team. A big thing, like we were talking about with those sacks, you got to be able to hand off your blockers, do that properly. I've seen, what I've seen from some of the practices is a lot of work with the stunts and being able to handle those stunts, know when to pass off your guy, know when you have to make your shifts. I really like to see that, because too often guys get into that mode. If here's my guy, this is who I go attack. You need guys that understand there's going to be those different kind of wrinkles in there, especially in the college game. So that's where I really like CSU in terms of, hey, these guys have seen a lot of different things. Now it's just, again, a matter of they haven't seen it at this kind of level in the Mountain West. But again, North Dakota State, they're playing a lot of games, and they're in some competition. So I expect this to be a very different team in terms of, hey, we're going to open up the run more, so the passes are going to be even higher percentage completions. We're going to be able to extend the field and not be just focused on one player. We're going to be able to, now you have to respect the run game. That was not respected last year for the Rams. And I think that was a big thing for them, is that, when you don't have a line, you really, your quarterback suffers. He's not going to have even 3 seconds to deliver the ball. You have to have 3 seconds minimum to deliver it. Right. And besides that, the running game, honestly, I think they had their Avery Morrow was below 3 yards per carry. I would have to check that, but that's very difficult for your leading rusher to be kind of running into your line and making a push, and kind of hoping that some push happens there. So that's what I'm seeing in terms of things I'm liking about this team and very excited about. But at the same time, I am worried about some of this defense. It's pretty similar, but at the same time, it comes down to are the guys going to be able to execute? And I do think you have Jake Howell and Henry Blackburn, who are tremendous talents. They're going to lead that defense very well. The big question for me is there going to be push up front? That is my question. Too often have I seen it be kind of a weak push. There's nothing really going on there. So your quarterback, the opposing quarterback, has 5 seconds to make a decision, and you can't have that happen, honestly.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's one of those things, just I want to implore Rams fans. There was an old book that I read growing up that I thought it was a fantastic football book, just kind of enhance your knowledge. I think it was by Pat Kerwin, but it was called Take Your Eyes Off the Ball. And what it was focusing on the offensive and defensive lines, because if you focus on that, you'll eventually come to where the play is going to go. If you see the hole opening up, it's a run play.
Yeah.
Rams fans, it's going to be so important in the first quarter of this game to see if that line has improved enough to be a competitive team within the Mountain West. Now, you're going to be facing a Pac-12 front, and they have some talented players for the Cougars. So this is going to be a true test for that offensive line to see how well they've gelled. And I'm telling you guys, take your eyes off the ball. Focus on that line. You'll be able to see the push. You'll be able to see if they're holding their lines. You'll be able to see if these defenders are stunting and if they're picking up their assignments. It's going to be vastly important for CSU to gel on that line and start to make improvements. Secondly, I want to see Kansas Stadium full. There were times last year where, it was kind of the same thing with CU. The support would be there in the first half. All of a sudden, you'd be down 2 touchdowns. The trickle had happened. Now, obviously, CU's fan base is fired up because of reasons we will get to, but I want to see Kansas Stadium full. If we can get that place rocking, the Cougars need to feel that. They need to feel that intensity.
Yeah.
Those stunts are going to be a little bit slower if that place is rocking. If you guys, can run the ball, if you guys can get those defenders dragging on their tongues a little bit, we can take advantage of those things. We can take advantage of the altitude. We can take advantage of the home crowd. I see an 11-point spread, and I see something that's very enticing for a bet. You've seen it as far as like the money. I was looking at it. It's crazy. I think even back in like June, I think Washington State had opened at like 16.5. So it's very obvious that a lot of money is coming in on CSU. They believe in Jay Norvell. They believe in the program that he's building. And the wise guys in Vegas, it's like I wrote in an article this week. They're not wrong. They didn't build Las Vegas on being wrong too often.
Yes.
So if those wise guys are moving the line to the degree of like 5 points, something's there. So I think CSU has a tremendous opportunity to play Washington State very closely. And I think it's going to be exciting to see, especially with them being able to host the game.
Yeah, and let me ask you, because obviously you know the Pac-12 just as well as I do. What are your thoughts on Cameron Ward? Obviously, kind of, I'm
a big fan.
You're a big fan.
Big fan of Cameron Ward.
Yeah,
I love this. So ever since I was a little kid, I've loved those dual style quarterbacks.
Right.
Any guy that can pick you apart with his arm or take off and run is my type of quarterback. And Cameron Ward fits that to a T. His escapability, the way he can move around the pocket and set his feet or even throw an off-balance type of throw, it's amazing to watch. He's a special athlete, and it's going to be vitally important for the defensive front to hold that kind of contain, against him so that you don't let him outside the pocket and make those plays where he's scrambling around and then launches something 60 yards down.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get to him. If you touch him, bring him down. Otherwise, you're leaving yourself open to those open lanes, and that's the biggest concern for me is, can this team contain Cameron Ward essentially? Because again, I don't see the push coming quite yet. Maybe I'm wrong, but if that push is there, they can still lose containment very easily. So I'm wondering, with a 4-2-5 kind of defense, do you have a spy on him at this point? It's early in the season. Maybe you don't expect as much coming from some of the receivers yet because some new receivers came in. Maybe you just go ahead and spy him and attack him as much as you can in order to try to get him uncomfortable in order to have those mistakes go around kind of just in that sense.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those things where I think you want to kind of shy away from playing too much man-to-man defense. I think you kind of alluded to it there, but having that QB spy, you don't want to be caught in a situation where on a 3rd and 5, they run everyone deep and you have your back to him, and all of a sudden he has 20 yards worth of grass that he can just take off with. So this is going to be one of those games where I think you are going to mix in a little more zone, maybe create some of those zone blitzes where maybe you're dropping a defensive end back into coverage, into a place where he's not expecting it. Those are things traditionally you'd see more in the program and maybe aren't as utilized as much in the college game. But this could be one of those opportunities with a coach like Jay Norvell, who obviously knows his stuff, where you could employ some of those tricky defenses in order to counter a quarterback that can move around with his feet like that.
And again, I think that they have the leaders to be able to command that zone defense and help guys get into position, again, by having some defensive backs that really know what they're doing and can call the defense. That is huge because, again, when you have leaders in zone coverage, I think for some people, early on when they're a little bit younger, or even when they're transferring, maybe they don't have as much experience in zone. So having those safeties, being able to lead that team, that's a huge factor for me.
Well, yeah, when you gotta have a guy like Jack Howell that can set the defense and be like kind of that quarterback on the back end.
Exactly.
I think it opens up those possibilities for you to play some more specialized defenses for an athlete like that.
Yeah.
So, John, what are we going with for a score prediction in Fort Collins this week?
Oh, this one is hard for me. I feel like, for me, I've seen Washington State. I feel like they're taking a step back. We spoke a little about it beforehand, how they're having some issues with, just even getting enough coaches on their team, because they had a hiring freeze due to Pac-12 spending issues, not getting enough money in. And at one point, they didn't have enough coaches for the staff. Actually, they were one under. So, for me, I'm very interested to see if they have enough leaders on this team to keep everyone kind of up and going, or are they kind of going to sink because they don't have that leadership? So for me, I'm going out on a limb here. I think that CSU is going to win this game. I think they're going to show the Pac-12 that, hey, you're the Pac-2 now. Whoever's lasting, whatever's going on now with Oregon State. I think that this will be a 31-28 game.
I love that. So my bet,
and it'll be packed. I think it'll be as close to a sellout as you can get.
I love that. Pack the house, Rams fans. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. So let's move on.
My bet of CSU plus, I think 14 at the time is looking good. Thank you. I like that.
Yes, it is looking good. You'll have to be from now on our bet expert and help us with that, because we need to. For me, you need to kind of help me, guide me into this and get me a little bit into it, because sometimes it's a little difficult when you everyone's just talking these numbers and no one ever tells you, kind of teaches you the basics to start off.
Right. You see the pluses, the minuses, the OVs. You're like, what the heck is going on?
Yes, I'm like, I just started. Please, someone, a class.
Right. All right. So, as you mentioned, it is time to officially kick off the Prime era. We will see, after months and months and months and months and months and months and months of buildup, we will finally see Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, leave his team onto the field in Fort Worth. It's going to be a crazy game. I don't know if you saw, John, but TCU has already released the special uniforms that they're going to be rocking. And
go on.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying that for me, it feels like the hype of everything is just going to this next level. TCU is feeling it. They are saying, like, this is our game. We're going to take advantage of it. We're going to show you what's up, and we're going to be back on the map, even though we've lost some players to the NFL. And so I'm very excited about all this hype from both schools.
Yeah,
exactly. It's really honestly from Texas. Because I speak to a lot of people in Texas. I feel them all saying, hey, it's going to be TCU. And then you have the Florida kind of gang joining us with Colorado. And it feels like a state kind of matchup.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome to see. There's been the teases, we kind of talk about uniforms, but there's been the teases even to the point where they're talking about Colorado, CU Buffalo's uniforms on a Fox NFL broadcast. It's insane. So I don't know, again, if you caught it, but, there was a little preview in one of the Instagram videos of Coach Prime talking with his daughter. And you could see laying on the floor there some very nice all-white looking uniforms with gold trim.
I wasn't quite sure about that, if they were real or not. It was that little suggestion.
It was that little snippet. And then if you saw on that broadcast later in the night, Erin Andrews was doing some sideline reporting and saying that she had talked to Coach Prime and saying that they were going to wear some very clean uniforms with gold like we've never seen.
So to you, what does that mean, gold we've never seen?
So my mind immediately went to, I don't know I think it was last year that they debuted these, or maybe the year before, but the basketball throwback uniforms where they had the gold numbering instead of the black numbering on the white uniforms. And then across the chest, it actually said Buffs instead of Colorado. So my mind went to there, something more throwback, something more, incorporating, maybe instead of saying Colorado on the front, maybe having Buffaloes or Buffs or some iteration of that across the front instead of your traditional Colorado. So yeah, it's going to be fun. The looks are going to be clean, and hopefully the football can follow. Because as we noted in our preview, I mean, there's been a ton of change. I think last I had heard, and I'll have to check my numbers, there's 86 new players that have been added to the Colorado roster, which, if you really think about it, there's 85 scholarships that are dedicated to the football team.
Am I right that there's only 4 players that were on the roster beforehand that are still on it?
It's something like that. And through my roster projection, there's only 3 players that are actually going to be starters this year that were starters last year. And that's when we talk about a Van Wells, a Gerard Christian Lichtenheim, and a Trevor Woods. Maybe a Marvin Ham. There's been that discussion. It was a very interesting discussion this week with linebacker coach Andre Hart, but there's basically going to be a 3-man rotation at the linebacker unit.
Now, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's
good.
I think it's good. So, they kind of talked about it. They're trying to maybe get into that mold of we see an Alabama defense where they don't have like a base set, because they rotate guys in and out in order to counter what the offense is doing. So you heard that where you might see a Marvin Ham and a Levante Bentley to start the game, but then you get a Demuy Kennedy in some of those sub packages where it's obviously a pass play.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a good lead-in for the entire team, because as you mentioned with the running back unit, obviously the linebacker unit, those DBs that we have in the back end, we got a ton of guys there.
Yes.
I think you're going to see guys rotating in and out. I don't think you're going to see the same set of players back-to-back plays for CU.
That, and again, I don't expect to see like huge numbers from these guys either. But for me, that's not what they're concerned about. They're concerned about showing, again, what they do on tape. And then if the Buffs are winning, guess what? Teams, NFL teams are going to be watching those guys. As Prime always says, all those different things till you get paid well. They're going to get paid well as long as, again, staying fresh, showing what they can do when they're at their best on their tape. So very excited about that. And you're on point with everyone staying fresh. Man, that is such an advantage to have depth up and down the board.
Right. And it's one of those things where I think when you actually start to deep dive into the roster, sure, you could take the Tom Luganville approach of looking at the roster and saying, it's the worst roster in college football.
That was strange to me. No, real quick. Let's talk about that real quick. What was going on there? Because is he talking about the year previously? What was going on through his head there?
To be honest with you, I don't really understand the quote, because even if you take it in context, he references UMass, who just came off a 10-point or double-digit win against New Mexico State. So I'm like, yeah, they've been not good in the past, and neither has CU. But when you can't take a team and say, even though they beat New Mexico State by double digits, they're the worst roster in college football. But even beyond that, CU's worse. I think it's one of those things where if you look at it, and even, Coach Sanders replied to him on Instagram and said, have you come down and see what we've been doing? Because you contrast Tom Luganville, a guy that probably has never stepped foot in Boulder since Deion's been the coach, to a guy like Urban Meyer, who's come down and seen it and goes, this team's good. This team's going to surprise a lot of people. And then you contrast that again with literally today, 24/7 releasing their talent ranking, and CU being a top 35 team as far as their talent rankings, which I'm just like, are you saying it for clicks? Are you saying it for headlines? I'm not really sure what's going on here, Tom.
It's one of those things like, I know that, Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it now, is monetized. Maybe he just wanted to get those 5 million impressions, get it out of the way, and earn his little few bucks there. Otherwise, I just do not understand it. And but please continue going on.
Yeah, totally.
Because that was really one of those things that I just had to grab your opinion.
No, yeah, it was strange. It was strange. It caught me by surprise. I'll say it at that. When you look at the actual matchups, obviously I've talked about the change, and I think you referenced it before. TCU has not been immune to change either. I think they set a school record this last year for having the most draft picks they've ever had in an offseason. So they're going to have a ton of new talent trying to reinforce it. And I think it all kind of starts up front, strangely enough, with the guy that started at quarterback against CU last year. Yeah. So if you look at in the first half, even into the third quarter, Max Duggan was not their starting quarterback. Right. It was Chandler Morris. Now, Chandler Morris is a guy that can definitely probably has more straight end speed, can take off a little more. He's not going to run people over like a Max Duggan. But obviously something special there with Max and the way that he was able to lead that team last year. Can Chandler, kind of harness that same energy that he brought last year? Because if you look at the first half of CU-TCU, that was a 7-6 game.
Yes.
And the only points that they had scored was on a punt return. So, there was something there. Chandler Morris, maybe he was nicked up coming into the game, and it's the injury in the third quarter that obviously did him in. Who knows? But, CU is able to do some things with a very, what's a politically correct term, subpar defense last year.
Yeah.
And this is a team that I think has dramatically improved, especially along the defensive front. Again, we're kind of getting back into that Tom Luganville. If you just look at it just by stars, you're not going to see a guy like Shane Cokes. Shane Cokes is a monster. Bus fans, Shane Cokes is a monster.
Yeah.
He comes from Dartmouth. He was not a highly recruited guy, transferred in from the Ivy League, but he's 6'3", 285 pounds and can play all over the defensive front. So He's going to be a name to watch. And he's one of those guys that one of the first to earn his number during spring camp. When you were, seeing, oh, God, he took number 99 away from Jalen Sami. And then after that, Jalen Sami transfers out.
Right.
Whoa, okay. He's grabbing some, he grabbed my attention for that.
Yeah.
So, when you start to look at it, I think it's one of those things where I think Colorado, strangely enough, even being a 20-point underdog, and I've written about this a couple of times, I think they're going to actually score some points first. They're going to come out fired up.
Yeah.
Now, I had obviously done some correspondence and a couple of articles on both of our sites, but I've been working with Anthony North. Thank you, Anthony, of Frogs of War. It's a SB Nation TCU site. And it's one of those things where I think it would be foolish for me to say that CU is going to completely hold down TCU. Mm-hmm. I think this is going to be an offensive shootout, to be honest with you. I think CU could potentially surprise them, maybe score a little early. But to say that we're going to hold down and not allow TCU to score, I think it's going to be foolish to say. Obviously being home, I think they're going to score some points.
I think a lot of that comes from is they lost Quentin Johnston to the draft to the Chargers in the first round. Darius Davis went in the fourth round. I can't quite remember where, but they lost their receivers a good chunk. And so the big thing for me is, hey, making sure to control those new receivers. Don't let them get comfortable, but at the same time, it can, even with this depth for these corners, if there's still a good group at TCU in terms of, hey, these guys are a lot of juniors. They've been there for a while. Yep. Again, one thing I would want to attack is that A gap if I were CU, just because they lost their starting center and Steve Aleve, I believe his name is. So for me, I just want to test those new players. Again, I understand you have maybe it's an older player, but still, I want to test the new offensive line when you have a center in there.
Right.
Make sure that, again, it's a huge game. Is he ready for that new role? So that's what I would do, especially early on with some blitzes.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. I think this is one of those things where, again, you got to stress that front. Not only is CU starting 3 new offensive linemen, so is TCU. They have, like you said, a bunch of guys that have graduated up to the NFL. They're going to be incorporating a new front. And as far as wide receivers go, when you look at it, 5 of their top 6 left last year. But they replaced them with a lot of talent. You look at a guy like JoJo Early from Alabama or J.P. Richardson from Oklahoma State. These are guys that have played at the Power 5 level. So
TCU is able to recruit very well. I know that for a while they had, I can't remember why they were slowing down a little bit, but they are recruiting at a top-notch level right now. Yeah. And that comes with transfers, with freshmen, everything. So this is a team that's going to be around for a while. I really believe that.
Yeah, I think so too. You look at it's hard for anyone in Texas with how big football is.
how do you not
Exactly.
how do you not get some good players to just say, hey, look, for some reason I wasn't looked at, I can fit in right here, and all of a sudden they were the same, very similar level actually of play.
Yep.
And that's why you always got to go, in those Texas states, in the Texas kind of realm of schools, that they're able to get talent up and down the board for, even the smaller schools.
Exactly.
I'm not saying TCU is small.
Right. No, exactly. No, I think you hit it on the head. They're a team that is recruited very well, has brought in a lot of reinforcements via the transfer portal. I made a joke about it. When you get 50 transfer athletes, it looks strange when you only have 12, but those 12 are high impact players,
Yes.
Especially, and you look at the schools that they're coming from. You look at 2 or 3 from Alabama. You look at 2 or 3 from other Big 12 schools or other Power 5 schools. And even crazy enough, you see a guy like, what is his name? We get a Willis Patrick actually transferring in from Jackson State.
Wow. So there's some familiarity there.
Might be a little familiarity, but it's going to be a fun matchup. I see, just kind of going into the betting realm again, I've kind of made this claim since the start of the season. I see a lot of value in Vegas undervaluing the Buffs. When you look at a 20-point spread, when you look at an over-under total of only 3.5 games for the season, there's some money to be made. I think before you actually see the product that CU is going to be put out on the field. And, from the practices I've seen, the film that I've watched, the athletes that are coming in, just getting to know them, I think there's a lot more talent on the field than Colorado's giving credit for, and I think there's value in those betting markets for.
I mean, that's good to know, though, that you have that kind of confidence and that you're one of the people that's able to get that access that, a lot of us aren't able to, where we're just kind of viewing some videos, and you have that unfiltered kind of ability to look at these plays. And so I trust your word over anyone else's, honestly, because, again, you're there.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a very fun season, and I'm looking forward to it, and it's going to be a fun opener. So I can't wait to get it kicked off.
So what do you think, in terms of the score? Let's go here.
In my prediction, it's going to be coming out tomorrow, I believe. I've already kind of referenced it. CU 42, TCU 38.
Boom.
Let's go, baby.
I love it. Start 1-0. Man, can you imagine all these other schools that are just going to be pouting and just – it's not even the schools. It's the fans of some of these other schools. They're going to be pouting. They're going to be so upset. And it's only going to mean things are going to get better for CU. They're going to keep developing. They're going to keep getting better. And I'm just so excited about that. And, again, they're going to be playing – I think some easier opponents as well down the line. So they should easily crush that 3.5 victory total. They should, easily be able to get a lot of these bets kind of closer into, a little bit closer, honestly.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
So
it's going to be fun.
This is going to be a fun weekend, honestly. I'm very excited. We have all 3 teams. I think you can pretty much be able to watch all 3 teams at their different times as well if you wanted to. So that's a big thing for us, and I'm very excited. So anything else that you have to say as we kind of head out here at the 1 hour mark?
No, I think we're good. I'm ready for football.
I'm ready for
all 3 teams to kick off. Let's go.
Yes, and I agree with you. It's time to get going, and NFL, college football, all of it. We're gonna live in it for however long we can. So thank you so much, everyone. Hope you had a great time. And I'm John Cronenberg. This is Tony Cosolo, and we had Rick Baum with us earlier with Air Force. So thank you so much. Be well and take care.
Go and try your luck. Test me in again. We let